Today I have two guests. I have Ben Adolph and I have Beth. Oh my goodness. And I forgot your last name. You have two last names.
Robertson-Martin. That's okay. You know what? I only put my initials on my Zoom because it's so long. So you can just call me RM, Beth RM, BRM. I'll answer to any of it.
Beth RM. Ben and Beth. And you are from the Merge Impact organization, which is so much more than I can really explain. But so I want you guys to kind of talk about what Merge Impact is, and then I maybe in a simple way, but because it's so new to so many people. But so what exactly would you say if somebody said, "What the heck is Merge Impact?"
What a good question. And we're still refining our answer. So Ben, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot, so it's just depends on the day and what we're focused on today. But I guess to summarize everything that we do is that we are an infrastructure for the organic, regenerative food and agriculture space that allows us to use data that we're collecting from farms, ranches, supply chains, and we use that to provide transparent feedback to consumers from the fields that produce what they're purchasing all the way to them. So we are, well, I like to say we're transitioning the value. So we do good things at the farm level, and we help those good things from an information standpoint get up to the consumer level, so they can see with 100% transparency to the fact that we created a good outcome, and now they're consuming that good outcome.
Ooh, wow.
Imagine if you could search for any food that met your criteria around climate, health. Say, for example, I want to know what's made in my area that has, crops grown that with biodiversity in mind, that has good soil carbon so that it's actually better for the planet than doing nothing. We create a data infrastructure so that you can search for that and find it and know that you're making the right choices. So we measure all the cool stuff at a farm that we care about in terms of planet and human health. And then we make it easy for brands and consumers to find that food.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's just so much more than the me person has ever thought about, for sure. I mean, just like you just put stuff in the ground, or you buy it from the farmer, and the farmer knows what they're doing, right? So it's really cool to know like that sort of backstory. But so what I was told is that, and what interested me in you guys is that I was told that you were sustainable food experts, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And that sounds really, really big. And I had no idea until I really talked to you guys what exactly that meant. And it's just so much bigger than like food sustainability. What you would whatever you would think of food sustainability is not as big as what you guys are doing, because it reaches so far.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We don't know if we're experts, but we certainly pretend to be.
I play one on TV.
Exactly.
Well, you sound very expert. You sound very expert. But it's really like it sounds really intense what you're doing, but at the same time you guys sound really laid back and just like, we want this food to be healthy. We want it to come from not too far away. It's important to us that people are eating the right food and eating healthy. And I love that. Like, when I was a little intimidated talking to you, but before I started talking to you, but you're so easy to talk to, and you have so much to share. And so I really appreciate that. But so one of the subjects was biodiversity, that I was told that you guys know a lot about. And that's not something that, it's a word that I've heard before, but understanding biodiversity is a little bit more complicated than I had in my head, I'm pretty sure. So, like, why is biodiversity important?
That's my favorite topic. So, if I ramble on too much, just give me the hook here. But so I think of it in two different ways. It's really all connected, but I think that you can think of it in terms of how are the crops grown? Meaning, is it monoculture or is it a nice rotation? So monoculture is kind of either one thing year over year, or corn, soy, corn, soy, corn, soy, right? So not much in terms of diversity. So a nice rotation would include your legume, then a grain crop, then a small grain, and then maybe some animal grazing in there. So so you're growing a diverse set of crops, enables the soil to rest and to regenerate and to sort of give you the best crops, highest yield and the best nutrient density. But in addition to that, biodiversity also means thinking about what's going on around the farm. When I was at General Mills, we partnered with an organization called the Xerces Society, and I'm now on their board. Very lucky to be able to say that. And they work on invertebrate health. Think of them, they describe themselves as the Audubon Society for bugs, which if you have a healthy bug population, everything else is going to end up working, right? So if you have a healthy invertebrate population, meaning you got lots of pollinator bugs, lots of bumblebees, and lots of good bugs, those are taking care of your bad pests. And then you're going to have birds that eat the bugs, and you're going to have mammals, and you're going to have just everything in your ecosystem is going to work. And that is actually, kind of a nature-based solution that's going to help you minimize inputs on the farm, meaning you don't have to spray pesticides a lot because you've got a supported ecosystem with lots of good bugs that eat the bad bugs. And so I think about little else other than providing a good example to my son and biodiversity.
Okay, okay. I mean, that's kind of how I thought about it, but a little bit bigger than how I thought about it. I do have a question though on that front. Being that I live in Maine, and just because it's something that I always try to do. I'm trying to do succession planting and companion planting, and then I want to do some winter over green manure type things, but I always time it badly. I want to put my winter stuff in, and I want to take my my weed block fabric off so that we can put compost in and let everything kind of rest over the winter, but I never get it in time to put stuff in the ground or put stuff on or take stuff off before it freezes. And so then I'm just well, shoot, the steer's down the tubes too. For the last 3 or 4 years, I'm I'm gonna put stuff on. I've got all these seeds, I'm all ready, and then it freezes too soon, and then I'm I can't get the cloth off, and it's just too late. So then
Are you what zone are you in your area in Maine? Are you 5 or 4?
5. I think 5.
Okay. Yeah, winter will get you every year. I mean, it happens, right? I've lost many a year to cover cropping because winter comes earlier than I had either anticipated or maybe paid attention to. Ben,
Right.
do you have any advice for how to handle a missed cover crop planting in the winter?
You can't do it in the spring,
no, not
right?
really. Not really. Yeah, I think that we face the same issues. It doesn't matter how large of an operation. It's really weather wins all the time. So I think the A for effort thing is real here. You did a lot of work to try to make it happen, and we just chalk it up to try next time to do the same things. I think the key thing that we look at when we look at biodiversity is not just species diversity as much as it is available habitat. So what space are you dedicating towards it? Because then then you really only have to get the seeds in the ground one time. So it's a challenge you can overcome once, and then it will persist. And there's some management associated with those habitat areas, but the habitat availability is what we put a lot of emphasis on when we do consider biodiversity, because it takes space to do these things. And then it also doesn't interfere with some cropping systems. As you can have a very diverse cropping system and not have it interfere with habitat. They can live on the margins of areas. It doesn't have to be all intertwined together every time. But yeah, there's really nothing we can do about the weather and timing, and that just wins every time. Happens all the time, and happens all the time in the large scale ag space. A lot of the money that's come out for seeding cover crops. I mean, they haven't, I don't know if they got seeded or not, but they gave a lot of money away for free for producers to put in cover crops. And they did it in my area, and it's hard to get them in time in my area sometimes. And
Right.
I'm a little bit further south, so there's always challenges with it. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that there's some there are areas that have a longer growing season, and that's kind of what I'm trying to not really extend my growing season, although I do want, you know, my lettuces and stuff to have as much. I want to not have to buy it anywhere else for the longest time possible. But so that's, you know, that's my reason for waiting so long before taking everything up and putting the compost down and stuff like that. But it's just, it's such a struggle for me to let go of what's growing and be like, okay, you need to go to bed because I need to feed your soil for next year. But I guess it's just a you know, it's a note to self, like start early, like maybe early October.
I mean, you've just described the problem of, you know, regenerative agriculture, which is that it's you know, we have to think about next year in addition to this year. So, you know, for farmers who do this exclusively for a living with razor thin margins, right? It's hard to take land out of production, in order to do something to feed the soil, even though, you know, next year or the next year or the next 3 years, you could see higher yields and higher returns. It's a really hard behavior change, I think, to convince people to do that. So, I mean, you are really at any scale describing, you know, sort of the plight of the American farmer.
Cool. Well, that's helpful. Thank you. And then what? Let's see. There was also a note about measuring and tracking for biodiversity. Does that mean something to you? Because I wrote it down and I was like, I'm not really sure what I would be tracking. But
That's a good question.
We've set up. Yeah, that is a good question. We've set up our biodiversity and ecosystems evaluation, which we announced a few weeks ago now. That is our effort to help standardize data collection associated with biodiversity from a measurement and monitoring standpoint. So we're looking at things like species counts and available space, crops in the rotation that could be considered habitat, perennial grains like kernza that offer nesting for species outside of the invertebrates as well. They're not just an invertebrate habitat; it's for, you know, other species to take cover in as well. So we look at everything associated with available habitat and what's existing in that habitat, and we score it. We don't say that the score is good or bad. We just say that this is the data that we collected, and we can use that data to help drive other systems that create change. So whether it's a certification program or whether it's a particular brand looking for specific qualities behind their food ingredients, we're just using that data to help serve another purpose outside of just knowing the numbers. So our goal is that we are going to create a biodiversity market. That would be the next step for us, is to use this index to then drive a biodiversity credit market with some of our partners in that space.
wow.
So I can give you an example of what that means, or in my sort of dream of how we make this work. So we measure biodiversity on a farm, right? So we say, hey, you know, almond grower in California, year over year, you're increasing the number of like flowering plants in your hedgerow, or a flower, you know, a wildflower strip nearby. And we measure, and year over year, we see that there's increases in biodiversity, basically either acreage of flowers planted, or we noted more species, or whatever it is. And then we find someone, let's say a real estate developer in California, who's just paved over a meadow to build some kind of building, right? An office space. And we say, and that builder is like, hey, you know, I'm excited about my building and that's going to make a lot of money. But my shareholders are also like, hey, don't be a jerk for paving over a meadow. How are you going to address the fact that you've just, you know, destroyed a bunch of habitat in Southern California? And that realtor or real estate developer can come to Merge and say, hey, I really messed up, but I need to do better. I will help fund some of your farmers to increase biodiversity. And so they pay farmers to plant flowers, basically.
Oh,
Because they're
that's
like,
cool.
I destroyed habitat over here, so I'm actually going to pay these farmers to keep it and to build more of it and to plant more flowers and more trees, so that I have offset some of the bad stuff I've done with some of the good stuff I'm paying for on the farm. Um,
Okay.
so that's kind of that's just a simply simplified version of kind of what we do.
That's really cool. And so are some oh gosh, companies will just reach out and say, "Hey, I did this really dumb thing and I want to make up for that by doing something nice." They how do they know about you? Are you like in a database for
We're listed on some so there's several like regenerative farming organizations, nonprofits that have us listed, our B protocol, so that people can find us. But we do a lot of outreach. We actively target and find folks who would be interested. And there's a lot of people who are, required by their shareholders, who are being pressured to go find solutions for some of the um more destructive things they've done in their own supply chain. So there's lots of ways. Networking, industry groups, um, working groups kind of thinking about biodiversity. So there's a handful of different ways that we find people who really want, but who also want to.
yeah.
I kind of joke about the guilt factor. But we do think that there's a lot of folks who are interested in that.
That's
Yeah, our
very
primary
cool.
focus right now is our primary focus right now is providing that data for the brands. That the credit market's not yet established. So really what we want to do is bring a certain volume of data that we can then show, how the interactions work together. But ideally what we want to do is work with brands up front that are going to be using the biodiversity data to drive any claims they want to have with their ingredients on biodiversity. And then as we are taking more measurements down the road and seeing the improvements, those improvements are what the farmer can then monetize as a credit of some type. But we up front right now, what we're working on is getting brands to understand the impact that biodiversity has on the entire ecosystem picture, and not just keep chasing carbon because it's required for reporting, but know that carbon happens because things like biodiversity are implemented, right? So
Yes.
we're taking steps to implement good practices that drive biodiversity upwards, and that creates a carbon outcome, and that creates a better water quality outcome, and that creates at the end of it, when we do all those things, we create the healthier community at the end of those systems. So that's really, it starts with biodiversity, but our goal right now is to sell that message that it starts with biodiversity. We're working in the carbon space and the other spaces, but biodiversity really drives all of those.
It sounds like just so much to think about. I mean, it sounds kind of like, in a very simplified way, like prevention, like education and prevention. So you educate these companies and about, what they're working with and what's around them and what they, maybe what they could do, and then they choose to do whatever they want to do. But I was also curious, Beth, after you were just talking, I know that you're a big networker. Do you like target the builders and say, "Hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Beth. I work with Merge Impact, and we're, educating people about biodiversity and and stuff like that." Do you do that, or are you like really not?
Yeah, I will do that. I will do that. Actually, I'll find we've got some friends or some people, who are on the board, and I'll say, hey, friend on the board, I hear so and so real estate developer or XYZ. And I'll ask for an introduction, and we'll just have a conversation about it. A lot of people I find, people really want to do good work. They just don't know how, right? I mean, they don't know. There's so many things to think about the
True.
average day, right? You're just bombarded with so much information. And we only think about sustainable food production or regenerative food production. So, and you said at the beginning that, we're sort of laid back and approachable. I mean, well, thank you for saying that. One, and two, I think, yeah, we're not trying to make anybody feel bad or stupid or like,
Yeah.
like they're really evil. This stuff is complicated, and the world is changing so fast, and
Right.
the rules are changing really fast, and it's hard for us to keep up. So someone who's not paying attention 24 hours a day isn't going to know. And so we love to have that conversation and love to help people understand. And just like there's a lot of stuff I don't understand, and so I'm willing to admit that. And we're all better together. So yeah. Yes, everything also is a negotiation to me. So I'm happy to. I'll tell anybody about biodiversity credits.
That's awesome. I mean, like you said, like there are just so many areas to think about. And if you're, you know, thinking about building or thinking about, starting a new venture or something, like it might not be top on your mind. You're like, ooh, if I pave this and I make all this parking, people will come, right? And so just on the builder situation, they might not be thinking about that. And so that it makes sense that you guys would be like, hey, have you considered this? Or, do you know about such and such, organisms or, whatever, which is really interesting. It's just like opening up this whole mindset that a lot of maybe business people have not thought about in their venture to grow and make money and stuff like that.
Yeah. We're trying to make it easier for people to know and to make good choices.
That's very cool.
I think regardless of the profession, you look at everyone as a consumer. And I think the key issue with consumers right now, and this is where it gets on the education and outreach side, but it's really, it's like access to information is the problem. It's not whether or not we want to do good or are doing good or aren't doing good. It's the fact that the consumer hasn't had the access to information about these things. So it's hard to establish any kind of emotional foundation when you don't have any information around it. So then, we make these, I would say CPGs in general make these broad statements that the consumers don't care yet, right? Like they just don't care yet. They're not paying for it yet. Well, it's because you haven't provided them with the product yet. You haven't provided them with the information behind the product yet. So we're really focused on the fundamentals on our side. So, the first one is just that information drives intelligence. So make the information attainable and provide access to it. And don't provide the same information that everyone else is providing because it hasn't worked. And we need to give new information to consumers. And on the other end, we give that same information back to the producers to drive those changes. But yeah, that's, access to information drives the whole market.
Yeah. Well, and so Ben, are you saying that this is new information? Or is it just not well-known information?
I'd say I think it's not information that we haven't had before. It's just how we are accessing it, how we're able to allow that information to travel through a supply chain is a lot different than how it's been done in the past. And even how our company started. Our company started as an in-person model before COVID. And then COVID made a lot of companies change the way they do business, including ours. So we became a software model, which actually is the model that the supply chains needed to establish these connections. So before it was, take the good thing the brand wants to happen, walk it to the farmer, work with them as an agronomist and do the good things, and then fill out the checklist and then walk it back to the brand. And it's just not an efficient path forward. There's no scale in that method. You need a ton of people. You need a ton of people that are trained in technical resources behind organic systems, regenerative systems, and it's all new. So on that note, we don't want to employ all these people. We just want to provide a resource that all these people can utilize in the field to help make their jobs easier. And that's just make that information more accessible as they're using it.
Right. Whew. Wow. That is
new.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's not necessarily new information in the sense that, people have been farming with biodiversity and nature in mind for obviously centuries. In fact, in the early 1900s, there was a book written called Farms of 40 Centuries. And it was highlighting farms that could produce, century over century for 4,000 years, which you sort of, at this current state, we don't ever think that that's possible, right? I mean, given kind of the post World War industrial agriculture that we have been employing, but the sort of crux of the story is that the reason that these farms worked is that they acted a lot like prairies, right? If you see a native prairie, driving across the state or across the country, lots of biodiversity, many different types of plants, some grasses, some flowers, and then that's how these farms were able to produce high quality food with good yields, century after century. And there's also some theories that, in fact, farmers who grew in these systems actually were happier because they looked like natural systems. And there's lots of studies that we've all heard and read that connect, mental well-being to nature. And if your farm looks like nature, you're inherently going to be happier. So these are not new concepts. It's just that we got away from them for so long because it was and I'm not going to say I wouldn't have done it if you had come to me in 1950 or 1960 with fertilizer I'd never heard of, and 3 weeks later I had a crop that looked amazing and no weeds. I'd be like, sign me up, please, that looks amazing. So we didn't know then, and we know now that those are not the kinds of systems that sustain us emotionally, mentally, or physically, for very much longer. So we're just trying to shed light on that. Not that I think everyone's farm should look like a prairie. I mean, that's probably harder than it sounds. But there's precedent for this type of system to totally work.
Okay. And then I know another one of the other things that I was advised to ask you guys about was soil nutrient density. And I think that Ben, you had a lot to say about that because I know you are very passionate about like distance. And I learned this year that like lettuce loses what is it 60% of its nutrient density like the second that it's cut from the ground. And so if it's being shipped across the country, it's probably losing a little bit. Do you have anything to say about that?
For sure, I can dive into that. Nutrient density is something that Beth brought to the table early this year as a protocol we could establish to help all the organizations out there that are trying to track it and correlate it back to good farming practices. And we have all this information about soils and ecosystems and how we're interacting with that production system in nature as we produce a crop. And we're tying it, at the end of the day, we're tying it back into the nutrient density of the crops that are produced. So it's soil nutrient density, it's soil function, it's all those things we're measuring on the soil's end. It's all the tasks that we do on a regular basis as farmers to make those good things happen or to implement those strategies. And then at the end, it's a product that either is or isn't good for us from a nutrient density standpoint. And it's not necessarily just nutrient density as a whole as much as it is the nutrients that we want to be expressed in a certain crop through practices like regenerative agriculture, like B vitamins in grains. Do we get more of those? Yes or no? It's not our job to say what levels are good. It's just our job to help understand that we did one practice over here and got a result, and another practice over here and we got a different result. So, I don't know which one is the right result, but if we want to go in this direction, we need to move closer over to that practice, right? So again, we're providing information. Nutrient density is it's another piece of information, but it connects the field to the fork or the producer to the consumer, however you want to look at it. It also provides supply chains with a very early snapshot of any ingredient needs they would have, from a supplemental standpoint. I mean, you can dive as deep as you want to into what we can provide a supply chain, but we're really here to provide the planet with a good production system, and then the human being that's consuming that last product with the healthiest product we can offer.
Mm, absolutely. Whew. Wow. That one is, that's a, I mean, soil density is, it's such an interesting thing, because I know there's so much, I mean, if we're not growing our own food, so much of it comes from so far away, and it's impossible to really know what's happening, and it's impossible, like there are just so many things that it seems like we're lacking, and um, there's so much that I can say about that. But I think, you know, you guys talking about food is, you're like right up my alley, because I love food.
As you're talking about transportation, we look at those food miles, like how far the food travels, and like you were saying, as it relates to nutrient density, but it ties into the community so much as well. Like where food is grown ties into the health of the community. You know, a rural community with no farmers market is probably, I would just make you know, just a statement and say that a rural community with no local food production is probably one of those declining rural communities that we're trying to figure out how to save, right? I mean, I live in a very rural area of Illinois, and most of the communities are in decline, and there's zero food grown around here. You know, it's all corn. There's a few farms that grow food for people around here and little farm stands, but it's not, you know, there's not local veggies in the supermarkets around here, even though it's some of the best soils in the United States. So the food miles are high in agricultural areas, right? Like my lettuce comes from California. My beets come from not even Illinois. Like we can grow beets. I grew up in a garden on my grandpa and grandma's. They had huge gardens and grew all the things, you know, on good Illinois soils. So I think what's inspiring to me is knowing that people on our platform can see that there's a starting point for every product, and we calculate that and we help people drive it closer to home. So create demand. And again, there's information, right? We show that there's a demand for a product, and now we can see it closer to home. And maybe someone says, oh, hey, look at, there's 50 people that want organic beets. I'll just grow some and deliver it to 50 people right down the road, instead of, you know, let someone else do it 500 miles away. Right. So we just want to inspire those kinds of changes. And food miles is what, you know, Beth's really focused on the nutrient density side and the food miles side, and that's really what we want to deliver brands, is that snapshot of here's nutrient density, here's how close we can bring ingredients into the supply chain, and just bring visibility to it.
Mm.
I grew up on a small tomato farm, and until I went to college, I had never tasted a store-bought tomato. And I dislike very much.
I dislike those. That was a rude awakening, huh?
I do, you know, listen, should I be as excited as I am to be able to get strawberries year round? Probably, I mean, I shouldn't want to, but you know, great. I recognize just the logistical wonder that is being able to get, you know, strawberries year round. But at the same time, I mean, I've just noticed recently that my local grocery store is now has a whole produce section dedicated to just the peak of the season.
Nice.
And I love that, because, and they're highlighting, you know, local and peak of the season. So so I think that's a small step in the right direction. I mean, in terms of local food miles, as well as like, hey, this is tomato season, you know?
Right. And also support your neighbors.
Right. I think that's a huge step. So I do support it. I think I'll stop eating strawberries in the winter, and you know, I'll just target my peak season vegetables.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you know, just because I have a jam business and it's just strawberry season just ended, like if you've eaten a local strawberry and then you've eaten the winter strawberry that's come from, you know, who knows where, it's not the same thing at all. It's just, there's no flavor. It's crazy that is called the same thing.
I know. Well, and I guarantee you it has a different nutrient profile as well. I mean, if you think about the color, if you think about the taste, and that's all linked to, you know, nutrient density. So I think that's, we're not doing ourselves any good by eating something less nutritious, even though it's still, kind of tasty. Not very tasty, but kind of. But yeah, that's right.
It's
You
a
eat
hint
jam
of the
in
same
winter, right?
experience. Yeah.
It's not. That's why you eat jam in the winter. If you want fruit, you eat it in jam. And if you wanted tomatoes, you eat canned tomatoes or stewed tomatoes. I mean, that's just how I grew up. So,
Right.
I think that's I'm not saying everyone should can their own tomatoes, but
Grab a friend. I say grab a friend.
Pretty fun. Yeah.
More fun. It's more fun with a friend. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's more fun.
It's more fun with a friend. It goes faster too. Someone's got to like wash the jars, and someone else has to, whatever, peel the tomatoes.
Exactly. Peeling the tomatoes makes it so much less fun. But if you have someone else to help you with it.
That's right. You need a good sharp knife.
There's like a boiling. Don't you just boil it real quick and that takes the skin off? What am I?
It loosens the skin.
Boil it till it splits, and then you stick it in ice water, and then you can just peel it right off.
Got it. I guess I'll start canning tomatoes.
We'll have a Merge Impact canning party.
That's actually fun.
The most fun is at the end of the season, end of tomato season, when it's just like the ugliest ugly tomatoes. You get a big cast iron pot. It looks like a witch's cauldron, and you light a wood fire under it, and you make ketchup.
That sounds
never awesome. Had store-bought ketchup either until I was in college. I know it sounds like I grew up on Little House on the Prairie, and I didn't, but it does sound like that.
It sounds amazing. It sounds so much fun. I'm totally getting into that. My guest on the podcast tomorrow is in France, and she sent her favorite like standard recipes. So like a mayonnaise and ketchup, and she uses a fermented ketchup. So I started mine on Saturday. So you got to ferment the tomatoes for 3 weeks, and then you add the stuff. So I'm really excited about that, and mustard and salad dressing. So I'm very excited about that.
That sounds great.
Because I've never made ketchup. I made tomato jam, which is kind of like ketchup. I love that. But anyway, I want to come to your end of season ketchup making party.
I know. I see. My husband is just looking. He always looks at me like, really? It seems hard because ketchup is, just at the store. And but now that I feel like if I've talked about it on a podcast, it's a done deal practically.
But there's not that much to it. I mean, you put all the, and it's so cool because you can use the like you were saying, the ugly tomatoes, the last tomatoes, because no one's gonna see it. It's all gonna add different flavor. I love that.
Yeah, so it's just time. Just time in the cauldron.
Do you dance around the pot like?
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely.
100% we do.
I feel like we need a band at this year's ketchup making ceremony.
Oh my goodness. So I neglected, oh my goodness, in my excitement to get to this part, like to the dirt of what you guys do, I neglected to ask and just have you talk about like how you guys ended up doing this and how you ended up working together. Because I know, Beth, you were saying you worked with General Mills, and you guys worked together before.
Yeah, we worked on a project, a very large organic transition project together. I was with a fertilizer company that worked on the agronomy side of that project, and Beth worked at General Mills, and that's when we first worked together. And it was like the dream experience, I guess. I was only 2 years into my career back in agriculture when this project came up, so it was very cool to be able to work on it right away. But it was a big organic transition, and Beth was working on the brand side, and I built the agronomy and conservation strategy. That ended up it didn't work out the way it was supposed to work out on the agronomy and conservation strategy. We'll just say that was not adopted. So yeah, I guess that's how we started working together. And then we started working together again after a pretty long break from from interacting while Beth was at General Mills and I was doing the fertilizer thing, and we started again in April of 2021.
21 or
2022.
22? 22. I don't know.
22.
Time has no meaning anymore after COVID. I'm like,
For
I don't
real.
know. It was
No,
yesterday. It was 6 years ago.
2022. Yeah, April 2022, and then formally started working together October 2022. We joined forces and then launched Merge Impact in early 2023. It was Merge Organics. I was kind of solely working with organic agriculture at the time. Just mostly in protest to the conventional space, but no other reason other than that. So focused on organics, and then there's a lot going on, and Beth helped put it together, and we created Merge Impact, and it took us into a completely new space of not just organic. We were being pulled into the carbon space pretty heavily, so we started looking at it from the lens of helping brands be accountable for emissions and those things, not just helping brands implement good production strategies and tracking it. We wanted to really look at it from a compliance angle as well. So that's where we took on a much different outward appearance, I think, at that point.
Yeah, we got to work on the coolest project ever. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I was just saying that's so fun though, how it kind of turned into what it is now, and it wasn't expected. That's all.
Yeah, you sort of never imagine. I don't know. Nothing I feel like I've done has been planned. I've sort of ended up here by accident, right? I just do cool stuff and meet cool people, and somehow it all works out, I guess. But we worked on, it was the best project, just converting almost 35,000 acres from conventional to organic. General Mills was the contract holder, meaning we bought the grain off that property. And then Ben's company was working on the agronomy plan and organic inputs. They were organic inputs for the farm. And there was someone who purchased the land out. There was sort of a three-way contract. And it didn't work. It didn't really work out. We learned a ton. We were both new and in the space and sort of just like, yeah, this is amazing. And then it blew up basically. And that's okay because it taught us a lot. And I think in some sense, we both have probably been trying, I don't know, is that our white whale? Is that our Moby Dick? Is that hey, that's the thing we never were able to do? Ben says no. I
don't think it's that as much as it is just that's the thing that taught us some hard lessons that we now built. We built some cool tools because of what we learned that long ago on that project. So, I would love to do it again and do it right and make it work. So it is kind of that too. I think it's been a great resource for us at the same time.
It has. I get a lot of leverage out of the stories too. You meet people, you're like, oh, most people in our space know the farm we're talking about too. They're just like, oh yeah, what a disaster. I'm like, oh, good.
That was a total long shot. Good for you for trying.
Yeah, glad my failure is just epically public. That's awesome. Yeah, when we reconnected and Ben was working on this for organic, it was like measuring, traceability. And my whole agriculture career has been about radical transparency, and so it just seemed like, just from my experience at General Mills, if I had had this tool, this Merge Impact tool, when I was at General Mills, it would have solved a lot of my problems there. So just seeing that value of that could help any brand with their, regenerative and sustainable journey.
Wow. I love that. And so did you guys both come from, you both came from farming families. So, is this something that you've always wanted to get into? Because this is I don't know, this is my second go around, I guess. So I'm learning. I'm learning all about the whole food farming thing.
Ironically, I hated growing up on a farm. I talk about the tomatoes like it's a magical experience, but I left as soon as I could. I went to school in St. Louis. I moved out to California and San Francisco after school. I was like, I am never going back. And now there's a picture of me under the definition of irony in the dictionary. So yeah, I didn't think I would. I didn't want to. Truth is, farming is, you try to romanticize it, but it's just really hard. it's hot and it's dirty and there are bugs. If you're doing it right, I guess there are bugs.
Right.
And it's long hours and weather gets you every year in some way or another. So yeah, I didn't
And not always
think.
money.
Right, right. I mean, just, it's not as glamorous as Instagram would make it seem. So no, I really didn't think I would. And then now it's like everywhere I go, I'm like, let's put in some pollinator habitat. Let's put in some tomatoes here. Let's see if let's add a few chickens to wherever, I'm like, oh, I don't know. So yeah, didn't think I would. But here I am. And now I'm, yeah, hoping to teach my kiddo, you know, that it's both hard but also rewarding and necessary.
I love that.
Absolutely.
And
do you want an answer from me too? No.
Yeah, I'm. You said that you grew up on a farm. You grew up on a farm, but what were you? What was the? So Beth grew up on a tomato farm, but you were your grandparents just grew.
I grew up conventional grain and livestock. So even still today, I just left the farming operation this year. This is my first year not actively farming with my family. So just fresh out, I guess.
Wow.
But I left. I didn't want, like Beth, I didn't want to farm. I wanted nothing to do with it. I graduated high school in 2000, so dating myself right here, that everything before that was not that great of an agricultural time, right? Like the 90s were not that great. I wrote a paper my
Sorry
first year
about
of
that.
college.
That was me.
I wrote a paper about ethanol back when ethanol was coming on in I think like 2000. I had to write a paper about ethanol and something about the corn market and the gasoline markets, and it was like I think corn was like $1.15 and ethanol, corn was like I don't know, it was 2.28 and ethanol was like over $1 a gallon or something like that. It was just weird how it all came together. But anyway, left the farm because I didn't want to do anything with farming, and I didn't do anything with farming until I came back to it in 2012. So I took that long off, took a couple other life choices or in there. And I was a strength and conditioning specialist for most of my life after college. So I worked with athletes, and I was kind of focused on natural nutrition and helping athletes connect the dots between performance and nutrition and what was good food, what wasn't good food. And then I met this ag company that I ended up working for that like retaught me agriculture, and it was all around connecting good soil things to good human things, like healthy soil, healthy plant, healthy people. That was kind of how it works, right? Take care of the soil takes care of the plants, and the plants will take care of the people or the animal and then the people, or however you want to look at it. But eventually it gets to the people. So I relearned everything that I had learned growing up on the farm anyway, and then I loved it. So I was like, wow, this is different when it makes sense to me in a way that I put it all together, instead of just knowing that I call FS to spray when I need spray. I call someone else when I need to order nitrogen, and then I grow corn and I take it to the elevator, and I'm just like everyone else. And that was like, I just didn't enjoy that. I didn't want that to be how it worked. So yeah, everything made sense when I connected those two together. And that's why like what we're doing today, when we talk about nutrient density, we're talking about these good ecosystem impact things that we're doing. And it's nice to be able to tie that all together. It's what it's all about. And I don't think anyone should be out here doing the job of a farmer because they need a job. Like they're doing it, they're trying to grow something or make something. I think that's, every farmer has that in them. They want to start with something like this, and then they want to see whatever it is at the end of it, and that they did that. And I think that's really important to them. And I also think that they would do it as good as they can do it if you just show them the information about whether or not it's good, right? So I think everyone would be a good climate farmer if they had the appropriate information to make that judgment on themselves. So that's what we're leaning on, is helping show the information that creates practice change and connects the consumer to that at the end of the day.
Right. Well, it worked for both of you guys. I mean, you both left farming and like ran away ran far away.
Far away.
But it's cool how it's like in your blood, and you came back to it, but you came back to it with a different mind, a different heart, and with more understanding. I mean, Ben, your job in strength training and learning how to heal nourish the body to make it stronger and work better, and that was perfect. That was like a perfect progression for you.
I like that.
Yeah, like Beth said, we just landed here. However we landed here, and it's like we're having a blast right now. So it's good. And that was, yeah, I don't want to understate the importance of doing a job like that. It was very important to this process. So
Yeah. And it would be the same for, I mean, it's such a matter of education and knowing that if you were to try something different, it could actually be better. It could, nourish people. It could be better for the earth, and, that whole like full circle thing. It's just, there's like a key piece of change. And that's the hard part for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I guess if we can change, right? Everyone can.
Yeah. But it's really important work what you guys are doing, and I'm so glad that you're doing it. I'm so glad you're talking to me about it. But so what does the word sustainability mean to you guys? Like, if I say that, what does that mean to you personally?
Beth, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
I mean, I can go. I can go. I mean, I throw a bomb on this one, but we used to refer to it, right? We talk about sustainable food production. And we mentioned this when we talked before, Amy, but I don't, sustainability is not good enough anymore. Because right, it means sustaining the current system, right? And I don't think that what we're doing should be sustained. I think it should be changed. And so we use the word regenerative kind of in the literal definition, which is systems that, regenerate soil, regenerate health, regenerate communities, and regenerate the planet. So meaning, it's better off than when you started. And I do think that's possible. I think that it is very possible to feed everyone and farm in a way that makes us all better, and in the community and for the planet. So to me, it's, sustainable isn't good enough anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I'll even go further and say that it's a corporate problem more than it is anything else, because sustainability at the corporate level, it's about balancing three pillars, the environment, the social impact, and the economic impact. Right? We've all had that drilled into us, and that's what sustainability is. You have to satisfy all the I say all, but it's only three, but you have to satisfy those three pillars in order to be sustainable, or to have yourself be graded as sustainable. But it's so backwards, because you don't get the other two without the environmental piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do all the good things environmentally and have a terrible social presence, but you're still doing good things environmentally. And I don't care if no one likes you on Facebook. like, or we want you to be good in your community, and that's what the social impact really means. But the reality is that you don't do good things at the farm level, and the other two don't even matter. Right. So if you don't do the good environment things, then the good economic things don't necessarily come, because, we could all be giant farmers making 1% margin per acre and heavy contributors to, not climate smart agriculture type things. But the reality is that farmers that take care of the environment have a completely different social image than farmers that, are along Interstate 55 in Illinois, spraying and over-tilling and creating dust storms that create fatal, pileups, because the perfect scenario happens. Like, the perfect scenario is over-tillage and degrading prime Illinois farmland. That's that scenario. But not to ramble on into that. But I guess that sustainability is just confused at the corporate level, when really, if we don't focus on the environmental component, there's no need to focus on the other two. It's not about balance. It's more of it's a calculated approach. It's not all three at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Bomb, because I think it's an important message. to shake things up a little bit and make those changes. So I'm down with that. Sustainability is not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Not it.
But thank you guys so much for your message. I do want to have you tell us how we can learn more about Merge Impact and what you guys are doing. How we can we hook people up with you? How does that work?
Mergeimpact.com is the website. We have a LinkedIn profile where we're working on getting out there on Instagram and other socials. But I would say right now we're on Instagram or LinkedIn, and we have our website. But just reach out. We want to work together. We love to build partnerships that create opportunity for large networks of producers. We have the infrastructure to help groups manage information if they're out there collecting it on producers and they have these mission-driven type activities going on. We're here for that. So I would just say our website, LinkedIn. We're trying to do a ton of press releases to show all the good things that we're doing as well. So that's out there too.
Awesome.
Beth,
any size farm can sign up on our platform. So if you go to mergeimpact.com and click on the register button, any size farm can register and check out the services. And we do no cost to farmers. So for all of our services. So
no cost to farmers.
That's our
wow.
our platform is based on no cost to farmers, and then we connect through the marketplace. But yeah, so
that's really cool.
In particular, small farmers I think would be a good target for us too.
Cool. Ooh, that's awesome. Absolutely. I know lots of farmers. Yeah. Yay!
Send them our way.
Careful what you offer. Very good. Oh my gosh, Ben and Beth, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really, really appreciate that. I love your message, and I love what you guys are doing.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having us on, and this is great. Our first podcast.
Ooh! Yay! First of many.
There you go.
Thanks for your time. It was great to meet you.
Take care, you guys.
Yeah. Thank you.